The split train, the maintenance hall trap.
A railway technician climbs onto the roof of what appears to be a safely parked commuter train inside a maintenance depot. Everything around him suggests the power has been shut off. But in less than a second, an invisible current tears through his body. A routine inspection becomes a fatal lesson. Maintenance depots are crowded places where trains are constantly shuffled to maximize space. On the day of the accident, a 3-car train sat completely inside the workshop for servicing. Behind it, a larger 5-car train was pulled onto the same track. The building wasn't long enough to fit the entire train, so only the front section entered the hall, while the remaining cars stayed outside. Modern electric trains carry high-voltage cables across the entire length of the roof, linking every carriage together. Although most of the train sat inside the workshop, its roof remained fully energized from end to end. When the technician stepped onto the roof and touched the metal housing, his body became the quickest path to ground. The current raced through his body, causing devastating internal injuries before anyone nearby could react. The accident exposed a dangerous blind spot in railway maintenance. Today, strict lockout procedures require every pantograph to be physically lowered, ensuring an invisible hazard like this can never silently follow workers inside again.
The nitrogen hatch, the silent displacement.
A refinery worker leans over an open inspection hatch to look inside a massive storage tank. He notices nothing unusual. No smell, no warning, no visible danger. 2 breaths later, he loses consciousness and slips headfirst into the dark tank below. Before fuel tanks can be cleaned, every trace of flammable vapor must be removed. To do that, technicians flood the tank with pure nitrogen, forcing out oxygen and leaving the interior incapable of igniting. The process prevents explosions, but it creates another deadly hazard. Nitrogen is completely invisible, odorless, and impossible to detect without specialized equipment. Believing the surrounding air was safe, the worker approached the open hatch without respiratory protection. As he leaned over to inspect the tank, an invisible stream of nitrogen venting from the opening engulfed his face. With each breath, oxygen vanished from his bloodstream until his brain simply shut down. Within seconds, he collapsed unconscious, falling through the hatch into the oxygen-starved tank below. By the time co-workers realized something was wrong, there was nothing they could do. Incidents like this transformed industrial safety, reinforcing one chilling reality: an open hatch can be just as deadly as an open flame, even when the air appears perfectly safe.
The exploding ring, the kinetic hand grenade.
A heavy equipment mechanic inflates the tire of a massive earth mover. Everything appears normal until a loud metallic crack echoes through the workshop. In an instant, the steel locking ring explodes from the wheel with the force of a grenade, becoming a projectile powerful enough to tear through both a man and a steel roof. Unlike ordinary vehicle wheels, heavy machinery often uses split-ring rims, multi-piece steel assemblies secured by a thick locking ring. Even a slight bend, crack, or improper fit can turn the wheel into a loaded weapon. As the mechanic inflated the tire, compressed air stored an incredible amount of energy inside the rubber. With each passing second, the pressure climbed. Then the warped locking ring finally lost its grip. The tire released its stored energy instantly, launching the several kilogram steel ring like a cannon shell. It struck the mechanic squarely in the chest with devastating force before continuing upward, punching straight through the workshop's corrugated steel roof. Today, large split-ring wheels are inflated inside reinforced safety cages designed to contain any failed components, ensuring the blast is absorbed by steel instead of the people working nearby.
The snapback edge, the sonar whip.
A tugboat deckhand watches a thick tow line stretch tighter and tighter as it pulls a fully loaded container ship through a harbor. Then, without warning, the line snaps, The rope doesn't simply fall. It whips back across the deck so fast, it's almost invisible. Towing operations place enormous strain on synthetic and steel cables, some as thick as a person's thigh. As they stretch under thousands of tons of force, they store tremendous amounts of elastic energy, much like an oversized rubber band pulled to its limit. The deckhand was monitoring the tow while standing inside what's known as the snap-back zone, the area where a broken line is expected to recoil if it fails. Moments later, a sudden surge placed just enough extra tension on the line to exceed its breaking point. The cable split in an instant. When the heavy synthetic rope struck the worker, it behaved less like a rope and more like a swinging steel beam, inflicting catastrophic injuries in a fraction of a second. Today, ships mark these deadly snap-back zones with bright warning paint across the deck. Those simple lines remind every sailor of an invisible danger. When a rope under tension breaks, the safest place is nowhere near its path.
The fluid scalpel, the hydraulic pinprick.
An excavator mechanic runs a gloved hand along a hydraulic hose, searching for a small leak. He feels nothing more than a tiny prick on his finger. By the end of the day, that almost invisible wound has become a race against time to save his hand, and eventually, his life. Heavy machinery relies on hydraulic systems operating at pressures exceeding 400 bar. When a hose begins to fail, it often develops a microscopic crack instead of bursting outright. The oil pierced his glove and skin instantly, leaving behind only a tiny puncture that looked no worse than an insect bite. Forced deep into the muscles and connective tissue, the hydraulic fluid spread rapidly through the hand. Swelling increased by the hour, blood flow was cut off, and tissue began to die from the inside out. Without immediate emergency surgery, the injury became life-threatening. Today, mechanics are taught never to search for hydraulic leaks with their hands. Instead, they hold a piece of cardboard or wood near the suspected leak. It's a simple habit that has prevented countless workers from turning a pin-sized wound into a fatal injury.
The reflected wave, the quarry blast shadow.
A quarry blaster ducks behind a massive granite outcrop, convinced the thick wall will protect him from the explosion he's about to trigger. Seconds later, the blast goes off. No rocks strike him. No debris reaches his position. Instead, an invisible wall of compressed air rebounds through the quarry and slams into his chest with fatal force. In mining and quarry operations, explosives are used to fracture thousands of tons of solid rock in an instant. On the day of the accident, the worker had chosen what appeared to be the perfect shelter behind a solid rock face. What no one accounted for was the shape of the quarry itself. As the dynamite detonated, the pressure wave struck the towering granite walls across the pit. Instead of dispersing, it reflected back, funneling its energy into the narrow alcove where the blaster was standing. The compressed air hit him like an invisible hammer. There were no broken bones, no obvious wounds, and almost no outward signs of injury. But inside his chest, the sudden impact disrupted the heart's electrical rhythm at the worst possible instant, sending it into fatal cardiac arrest. The accident revealed a danger hidden in the physics of explosions. In blasting operations, it's not just the explosive itself that can kill. Sometimes the deadliest force is the one you can neither see nor hear until it's already passed through you.